Welcome, everyone. We are so happy that you guys are all here. My name is Laura Smith. I'm the grassroots coordinator with the Arizona Partnership for Immunization, otherwise known as TAPI. You'll see TAPI throughout the presentation today. We are so happy you're all here for the presentation, 10 things parents need to know about why we immunize training. We have two excellent presenters, Kai McKinstry and Wendy O'Donnell. They are health educators with the Arizona Department of Health Services and have a lot of knowledge and experience they can share with us today. If you have any questions during the presentation, please use the chat box. We can answer any questions that you may have. And if we don't answer your question today, we will be emailing you a copy of all the questions and answers from today. I think that is it. Thank you all for coming today. So we will get started with the presentation. Wendy and Kai, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Kai. I am a certified health education specialist. I've got a bachelor's in public health. I'm super excited to be presenting again with TAPI and KHEC. So thank you very much for having me and Wendy, of course. We are going to, actually, Wendy, do you want to introduce yourself real quick? Sorry.
Yes,
all about me.
That's okay. Hi, I'm Wendy O'Donnell. I'm a master certified health education specialist. It's a mouthful. And I have my master's in public health and a long background in immunization education. So just like Kai, I'm happy to be here and share my experiences and my knowledge. I want you all to know that I have my 3-month-old son is here with me today. So if you hear baby noises in the background, that's what that is. And also I might have to turn off my video, but I'm still here and I'm still paying attention and but just don't want to distract anyone with him. So just wanted to make sure everyone knew that. Yeah, and I'm excited to get started.
Excellent, thank you. So a little on Wendy and I both. We are both parents of several kiddos. We have plenty of experience. Not just in providing education around vaccines, but also personal experience of how these things have affected us, how they've affected our families, and especially our little ones. So we are going to be kind of offering some anecdotal information, definitely some real life things that have affected us, and hopefully that'll kind of help tie into the conversations that you'll be having with families as well. So going back to that why we immunize slide, just want to kind of talk about what we're doing here and what our goal is. Today we're going to discuss the 10 science-centered, evidence-based concepts about why parents should vaccinate their little ones. This is not anecdotal information. This is not just something that we picked out of a bucket somewhere. This is all science-centered and evidence-based. So it is real, live, factual information that you can use for these families that you're speaking with. We're also going to answer some common questions and address some misconceptions about, distinguishing facts from myth. There's a whole section, fact versus myth. It's going to tackle a lot of those commonly heard things that you're dealing with, like, I don't want my kid to get vaccinated because I don't want them to have autism. We're going to dig into that, as well as some other things that you've been hearing that we can kind of help dispel. And we also want to provide you with some credible vaccine sources, things that are not just easy for you to use and find, but also things that are easy for you to refer other folks to. So they're very user-friendly, they're very accessible, and they are reliable. They're from sources that are valid and reliable. So the goal is that our social workers, teachers, health educators, community outreach specialists, parents, all become knowledgeable on vaccine benefits. And this will kind of help drive parents to make more informed decisions about vaccinating their little ones. So we are going to show a quick video here about why we should immunize our little ones, basically the things that we've learned through vaccination. And then we'll kind of chat about it a little more here after the video is done.
I want to tell you about a time
in American history so that
it never repeats itself.
So it never repeats itself. It was a harrowing time.
A heart-wrenching time.
I could hear my mother warn me, Seal, don't go out and play.
My family was ravaged.
Thousands and thousands died.
I was scared.
So scared.
And then one day,
And then one day, there was hope.
Before vaccines, there were few ways to help protect against deadly illnesses. Diseases like measles,
Meningitis,
diphtheria,
Hib,
whooping cough,
or polio, which killed my grandma's youngest son. Without vaccines, these threats can reemerge.
I'm here.
I'm here.
I'm here to tell my children to help protect their children.
Get your kids vaccinated and keep them on schedule.
I never want my grandchildren to see what I saw.
So that is a phenomenally produced video that, you know, although it doesn't necessarily provide us with the facts that we can kind of throw out to people as needed, it really does speak emotionally to kind of the problem that we're running into now, which is vaccine amnesia or public health amnesia. You may or may not have heard that term, but essentially, you know, the real issue that we're running into is vaccines are effective. Vaccines are effective. Anyway, we're running into this issue where vaccines work so well that we forget how detrimental, how terrible some of these vaccine preventable diseases are. And so we kind of start thinking, oh, well, you know, chickenpox isn't that bad, so I don't need the vaccine. Measles isn't that bad, so I don't need the vaccine, because you don't have firsthand or even secondhand experience of how bad some of these diseases really, really are. So vaccines kind of are their own double-edged sword, where they work so well that people forget how terrible the disease was. So one of the public health initiatives for vaccination is really to kind of understand that these diseases are terrible, and we need to kind of remember that the vaccine is going to be necessary no matter whether or not you kind of have that first or second-hand experience. Right now we're running into a measles outbreak over the last several years, because we have developed vaccine amnesia around measles vaccinations as well as others. But so many people have not experienced measles that they're not getting vaccinated, and now we're experiencing measles, and it's one of those things where it just didn't have to happen. So a goal here is definitely to make sure that we remember that vaccinations are required whether or not we've experienced this disease or not. Okay, so this map is pretty cool. This map shows us exactly what we were talking about with that vaccine amnesia or public health amnesia. We thought that measles was eradicated in 2000, but in 2014, we started seeing new cases popping up in some of these unvaccinated communities. A lot of us signed in today would remember this happening. And so still, I mean, 5 years later, back in 2019, when this data was put together, we see that all of the states that are dark blue here on this map reported at least one case of measles. So what was once eradicated in 2000 is definitely popping up now in a wide swath of the country. So if you really look and count the states, there's 28 states that experienced at least one measles case, which is, it's more than half of the country. So the problem persists, and the outbreaks are kind of a direct effect of lower rates of immunization. That shows that even we haven't seen a single case of disease in 14 years. That doesn't mean that it's actually gone away. So continued immunization and understanding that vaccine amnesia is a real thing is really truly the only way to prevent these diseases long term. The epidemiological trends are actually showing that right now, pertussis, which is whooping cough, is beginning to recirculate as well. This slide is fun because I think most of us are in Arizona right now. And I mean, I certainly am, and I've got too many kids, if you ask Wendy. And so I find this particularly interesting. And those of you who are providing services or are parents of school agers, I really want you to kind of perk up a little bit and really pay attention to this, because this is really important in the conversation, not just in the everyday vaccines that we're used to, but also in the COVID vaccine. So Arizona Department of Health Services requires every school to report at least once a year the coverage levels of kids enrolled in their schools, and the information is made available to the public. Parents can be informed about coverage levels. And so just, take a peek at this map, and then also remember that you can pull this data up as you would like. Arizona schools used to be at a 95% coverage rate, which is relatively good when we're talking about herd immunity. I'm struggling today. But over the last 5 or 6 years, that level of protection has dropped dramatically. So the number of vaccine exemptions that have been accepted has kind of caused this number to really plummet. So there are some schools in Arizona that have vaccination rates or coverage rates as low as 40%, 40. So because of these numbers, because of these exemptions, Arizona has been identified as a hotspot. So we are more susceptible to outbreaks of vaccine preventable diseases because we have such a large exemption rate in our schools. Okay, topic 2. Vaccine preventable diseases still exist. This is my least favorite slide. This is my least favorite topic. This is really difficult for me. I'm a mom of 4 little ones, 1 and under, and I mean, this is really tough. So vaccine preventable diseases like measles, mumps, pertussis, which is whooping cough, and pneumonia still affect and cause sickness in children in the USA each year. The data shows that the diseases still exist and are circulating. It can be argued that if you've never experienced some of these diseases, you will fall into that trap of believing that the diseases no longer exist, or it's not as bad as you had maybe thought it was. And again, like we talked about, it's because it may not have affected you personally. This video is really hard for me to watch. I'm definitely going to tear up. I've seen it like 65 times, unfortunately, and it's uncomfortable. You don't get to turn it off though. You definitely need to stay on and watch this and understand, the difficulty that is real and exists in real life with these little ones.
You're just kind of heavy. Uh-oh. There we go. Okay. It's okay. Okay, take a breath in, honey. Come on. Almost there. There we go. Oh my. It's okay. It's okay. Yeah. It's okay. Here. Yeah. It's okay. Yeah. Yeah. It's okay, sweetie. Yeah. It's okay. It's right. Yeah. It's okay. It's okay. Yeah. It's okay. Yeah. I know. Yes, it's oh, I know. It's fine. It's okay.
So Kai and Wendy, you both are muted right now.
Hey, sorry about that. So as difficult and uncomfortable as it is to watch that, again, I mean, it's really important to kind of internalize that and allow that to help you influence the conversation when you're talking about parents and vaccinations. That is, this little one has whooping cough, and it is a vaccine preventable disease. It doesn't have to happen like that, and it's really unfortunate that this little one is fighting for her life, essentially, for something that could be vaccine prevented. So you're welcome to use any of these resources. I don't know if I would suggest using this one because it's it's a lot, but it is something I think that is important for you as an educator to really internalize and understand. All right, let's talk about number 3. Outbreaks are preventable when parents make the decision to vaccinate. We're going to talk about community immunity or herd immunity, which is something I think that we've been hearing a lot about as of late, especially because of the COVID conversation and COVID vaccination conversation, as well as COVID infection antibody conversations. We're going to kind of touch on that a little bit in further slides. But the way that we have kind of traditionally prevented outbreaks is to keep 95% of the population immunized against vaccine preventable diseases. If 95% of people have immunity, diseases typically can't spread through the community. It's also important that our youngest kids are immunized before entering school. This helps protect the community around them. It's not just them, it's the community around them as well. So this is referred to, like I said, as herd immunity or community immunity. Excuse me. So we're attempting to keep our communities healthy, and the best way to do that is to vaccinate. I think it's easiest to think about community immunity in terms of offense. So I mentioned 7,000 times now that I've got a lot of little ones. My littlest ones are almost 3 months old, and they were born premature. So there are some vaccines that they simply don't have at the moment. Now they do have their 2-month vaccines, which is very fortunate, but they can't have vaccines that are meant for older kids. So with COVID going around, for example, one of the most important things for my family to do was to vaccinate against COVID, so that my little ones who are in the community being hit more and more hard by the Delta variant, so that my kids aren't getting necessarily COVID from myself. So it makes it more difficult, much more difficult for me or anyone else that's around my kids that have been vaccinated to pass COVID to my babies. And you're going to think of the same thing with pertussis and with whooping cough and with chickenpox. We are vaccinated so that our kids don't get it. So you're going to kind of think of us as a fence, and each one of us that is vaccinated is kind of a rung in that fence, protecting baby or babies or communities or even our immunocompromised folks who are not babies, adults, teens, adolescents. All of those folks who can't get vaccinated are kind of protected behind that fence of us who are vaccinated, each individual rung of that fence. So that might kind of be an analogy in your mind that kind of helps, and maybe you could share that with others, kind of helps give a picture to what the actual goal is here. So there are folks that can't get vaccinated because, like in my case, they're too young, or maybe they are medically fragile. They can't be immunized because they're allergic to an ingredient in the vaccine, or they're immunocompromised. So the goal here is to protect them by that fence. And when a disease comes up, it's going to hit that fence, and those immunized people will not get sick, and we certainly won't be able to spread that disease to folks who can't get vaccinated. This is fun. It's kind of wordy and there's numbers. I'm not necessarily saying that it's going to be the best for you to share as a resource unless you want to post it up somewhere, like in one of your offices or something like that. But from an education standpoint, this is actually a pretty cool slide, and it really just proves that vaccines work. So if we're going to look through this, you can really kind of see there are some diseases that we've eradicated as a result of vaccines and herd immunity and reaching that 95% or greater to eradicate that disease. And I mean, we can go through a couple of them, but I want to make sure that you have hard evidence that vaccines work. Once we have a vaccine against a disease, we have been able to eradicate, eliminate, or at least significantly decrease the number of cases. In many cases, almost down to 0% after the vaccine's been introduced. Vaccines work. You simply can't argue it. They are researched, they're monitored, they're followed in the community, they are tested, and they're updated, which is something else that we're going to kind of touch on in some future slides. Vaccines that we use today are not the same ones that were originally developed. Once a vaccine is approved for use, it's still constantly tested and researched for safety and efficiency, excuse me. The diseases go away because vaccines work. So, I mean, the smallpox vaccine, even from almost 100 years ago, almost 100 years ago, is not the same vaccine necessarily. There have been lots of things going on and happening with that vaccine to target what we're looking for, to make sure that any kind of side effect has been addressed, so that they can change the formula a bit and make things more effective, less dosages, whatever we need to do to make it possible to get to as many people as possible without major side effects, and enabling us to eradicate the disease. So looking at this slide here, smallpox was eradicated in 1980. Cases decreased by 100%. There has not been a case of smallpox. Diphtheria, the last outbreak was in the 1970s, and that's decreased by 99.9%. Pertussis, which is whooping cough, again, we talked about, is kind of on the rise, but the incidences have decreased 94.9%. We'll go down to polio. That was eliminated in 1979. There has not been a case of polio. And this is, again, thank you 100% to vaccinations, herd immunity, and families getting out there and getting this thing done. Measles, we did have that endemic that we talked about. We thought that it was eliminated in 2000. And at that time, cases had decreased 99.9%. Then we kind of get down to varicella. Varicella, which is chickenpox, we have decreased cases to 99.9% as well. And this is all thanks to vaccines. So again, not necessarily saying I would pull this out and like show it to a kid in your WIC office, or I'm not even sure I would include it in your packet for Head Start, but where this graphic can be posted on a wall for a family to see, or you can easily reference it, might be really useful for you. Excuse me. So this is my favorite analogy personally. The main point, of course, to take from the slide is vaccines save an estimated 42,000 lives every year in the US alone, which is 3 times more than seatbelts and child restraints combined. So according to the CDC, vaccines save about 42,000 lives every year. And we need to think about that for a minute. Choosing not to vaccinate your kid is like putting them in the car with no seatbelt or child restraint, which is something, frankly, I can't imagine. It's inconvenient. I hate climbing through the car to buckle my kid in, but ultimately it takes one other person. It could be myself or someone I have no control over in a car next to me to put my life and my children's lives at risk. And that car seat could ultimately be what saves their lives. That seatbelt could ultimately be what saves their lives. So most of the time, statistically we'll probably be fine because, excuse me, statistically we'll probably be fine. But the chances are actually quite good that there could be a serious injury as a result of not having my kid in a seatbelt or a child restraint. And you can kind of start thinking of vaccines the same way. It only takes a single accident for a seatbelt or a child restraint to be worthwhile in saving your child's life. And it only takes a single exposure of a disease that you can't see for your child to become ill. And the long-term effects of their health can be serious. And that's if they survive. So I know this is kind of a dark way to present that information, but the fact of the matter is it really only takes one exposure for your kid to become deathly ill. And if that could be prevented by a vaccine, it's really well worth getting out there and providing that education and these resources.
Can I add something real quick?
Please do.
So I like to use this analogy also with the COVID vaccine, except for I always say, and this like Kai said, kind of takes it to a dark place, but your decision to not get vaccinated is It's different in the fact that not using proper car restraints only affects you and your family. So if you don't buckle your child in correctly and you get in an accident, your decision to not buckle them up affects you and your family. But your decision to not get vaccinated affects the community. So it has a wider spread. Again, I don't know if you would ever use that analogy. I was kind of clunky when I was saying it, but it just has wider implications than just you and your family. It affects the whole community. It affects your child's school, everybody around you. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I guess, in the thought of me not buckling my kid and someone else hitting us, that does apply when we're talking COVID, but like you said, I mean, even more than that, it's without a COVID vaccine, you're risking other people's lives, not just your own. And that is the case with all of our vaccines, frankly. So moving on to number 5, vaccines offer protection to us, sometimes in different ways. There we go. Newborns receive some immunity from their mothers if mom, especially if mom's getting vaccinated while pregnant, but it does wear off when they are still young. So some people can't get vaccinated if they're too sick or have allergies. So vaccinating you and your family helps protect those folks. Getting shots offers protection that will help your child's immune system fight when they are exposed to diseases. So that all seems like, common knowledge. I think that's something we all kind of know. Vaccines protect us from getting the actual disease, but newborns are too young to get most vaccines. So they're protected by their moms and mom's vaccines. But this protection, it doesn't last very long. This lasts up to 2 months. And that's why the vaccine schedule starts at 2 months old, so that we can kind of continue that protection from when baby's starting to lose mom's antibodies. And as previously stated more than once now, some people cannot get vaccinated. They're too sick or they have allergies. And these people are protected by those around them that are getting vaccinated. So we're thinking back to our fence analogy a few slides ago. And just as a side note, I think that you should know that only approximately 1 in a million children have a true allergic reaction to a vaccine. Sometimes people get swelling or a rash, or they start feeling sick and think it's an allergic reaction, but a true allergic reaction is severe and it is incredibly rare. The CDC has researched the best time to give vaccines to offer the maximum benefit. So we do want to try to stay on the vaccine schedule. It exists for very specific reasons. The vaccine schedule, and I'll just kind of share a little about myself. I am a foster mom. And when we first had our little ones who had not been vaccinated, the suggestion was to get them vaccinated, just get them caught up right now. And that had me super wary. I was really, I was uncomfortable by, the idea of giving them all of these vaccines at one time. And we are going to cover this in the later slide too. But the vaccine schedule is particularly important because it's designed to work at specific stages in a kiddo's life or an adult's life even. So, I mean, with my vaccination education, with my public health education, with my bachelor's in public health, even I was like, oh, I don't think we should do all these shots at one time. I sat down with our pediatrician. I was like, do you think we could do a delayed schedule? And it's not that she was not willing to be flexible, but she had a very serious talk with me about how that's not in the baby's best interest. And although it makes me uncomfortable to see my kid getting shots, it's actually in their best interest to have these vaccinations, to get caught up as soon as we can, to get them on schedule so that they're protecting both themselves, but also the folks around them. So we all have those conversations. I mean, it doesn't necessarily matter what we know. A lot of this depends on how we feel. And you do need to kind of defer to your medical expert, your pediatrician, your GP, to kind of help guide you in making some of those decisions. They really genuinely have your best interest at heart. And Wendy, I think I'm going to pass this off to you to talk about our ninjas.
Sounds good.
All right.
So our 6th tip, vaccine antibodies act as a personal ninjas to protect from the actual disease. So after someone gets an actual disease, so after they actually get sick, if they had measles, if they, got pertussis, it can take several months or years for their immune system to fully recover, leaving them vulnerable to other illnesses and disease. So it's better to get the vaccine. You get the vaccine, your body works with the vaccine, and then you have immunity without having to go through all of the sickness and without having months and months and months of more sickness and the other side effects that could happen as a result of getting the active disease. Many years ago, when the vaccines were developed, they had a lot more antigens. As you can see on our slide, we have 30 years ago versus today. Now the vaccines have been refined and updated to reduce the amount of antigens needed to protect against the disease. And Kai had mentioned this earlier, how vaccines, it's not a one and done situation where it's developed, people get it, and then they're done with it. Scientists and the public health community is constantly evaluating what's in the vaccines, how effective they are, the side effects, things like that, to refine them and to make them better. So it's not just it's done and then, you know, there's no more research or anything going into it. So the vaccine itself will create the memory of disease without actually having to get the disease. So the next time you're exposed to the disease, your immune system says, I remember this, I don't want it, we're not going to have it, and you don't get sick and you don't get the active disease. And this is a really great slide. Babies get their first vaccine from moms. So hopefully you have all heard that it is recommended for every pregnant mom to get vaccinated with pertussis and with the flu vaccine, because that gives the baby some protection in their first couple months of life, as Kai had mentioned. Another recommendation, of course, now is to get the COVID vaccine when pregnant. I told you at the beginning, my son is 3 months old, and I was fortunate enough to be able to get the vaccine when it was released, so that I could give him a little bit more protection. And it definitely has given me peace of mind. You know, we're not in a bubble. We can't completely protect ourselves from everybody out there. I have a daughter in school. So it's very scary to know that she may be exposed and then come home and expose her brother and sister. But knowing that he had that protection because I got vaccinated during pregnancy, not just with the COVID vaccine, I also got Tdap and the flu vaccine as well, as I've done with all my pregnancies. It just gives me a little bit more peace of mind. And it's really the first line of defense, the only line of defense against some of these diseases that are so detrimental to the health of a newborn in those first couple months of life. Of course, it's important for pregnant moms to talk to their OBGYN about these vaccines, and just to make sure that they're getting them at the correct time. Just like with any other one, it's important to get it at the right stage so it works with your body the correct way. And flu vaccine, I think, you know, we've always, if you've been around in public health or health education, or even just in the community, you always hear people talk about the flu vaccine, and I've never gotten the flu vaccine, and I've never gotten the flu. And the one time I did get the vaccine, I did get the flu. It's really important to remember that the flu vaccine is the best defense against the flu. We talked about this last year. You know, it's even more important in these times to get your flu vaccine, because if you had the flu and you had COVID, I mean, just imagine how terrible, first of all, it's terrible you would feel, how it could really have a huge impact on your health. What we also know about the flu is that when you get the vaccine, if you were exposed to the flu and if you got the flu, your symptoms would be a lot less severe. And it's also important to remember that if you are having flu-like symptoms, to please talk to your doctor about it, get tested for flu and COVID, and make sure that you are taking those precautions to keep you know, your family safe and the community safe. one reason people think that they get the flu after they get the flu shot is because they'll have body aches, maybe a low-grade fever, so they feel like they actually are sick. So I always like to frame this that that's a good sign. That's a sign that your body is having an immune response to the flu vaccine, which is what we want. We want your body, your immune system, to recognize that it has been, that there's something introduced. So when your body is doing that, it's a sign that your body is creating the immunity against the flu. So I try to frame it as a good thing. I know people aren't, they don't want to think of having a fever or body aches and chills and those types of symptoms as a good thing. But it is. It's a sign that your body is doing what it's supposed to be doing. This is a great one. Overwhelmingly, I mean, we see so much out there, and we have all these, Google doctors who they're Google researchers. They think that they know everything. But overwhelmingly, doctors and science support vaccination. Regular vaccination, COVID vaccination, all of it all together. And all of these professional organizations are very supportive and strongly support protecting children with all recommended vaccinations. And really, these are trusted people in your life. So if you have a pediatrician, a family practice doctor, anyone that you're going and you're taking your kids to see, or you see yourself and the families that you work with see, these are trusted people in your life. And if they're not, then you should probably find a new doctor. And there are so many out there that maybe be more of your style. But these people have studied for many years. They're literate in science, and they understand the ingredients and the testing and all of the stuff that's gone into making vaccines. So these are people that you should trust and listen to and take their recommendations seriously. They know much more than that person behind a keyboard who's just fallen down a rabbit hole of misinformation. And of course, you want to make sure that all kids are up to date on their shots before they go back to school. We've been back in school for a couple of weeks now. And this is always one thing just to kind of check off the list of back to school preparation. They're required when you're entering childcare, preschool, or kindergarten. And of course, they help protect themselves, their classmates, their teachers, the lunch lady, everybody, their community. So that's why they are recommended. Most doctors' offices have opened back up, but it may be something that your families will have to call and discuss. What we've seen is that kids did fall behind on their shots over the last year because they were afraid of taking their kids to the doctor, which I totally get. But many different offices have different protocol. I know mine, they see well children in the morning, and they see sick ones in the afternoon, and then they totally disinfect the place. They have limited amount of people who can come to the visit. So they're really trying to lessen the exposure and create a clean environment. So families and parents should feel comfortable bringing their kids to the doctors to get those vaccines, to make sure that they're up to date. And I don't know if you can tell, I kind of have a little bit of a raspy voice because, of course, my daughter came home first couple of weeks from school, and she's exposed to all these new kids, and she gets a cold. She got all of us sick. Luckily, it was not COVID. We were all tested and came back good. But it just shows that you're just exposed to all these other kids, all these other germs, and it's important to make sure that they're as protected as they can be when they do go off to school.
Wendy, if I could just add really quickly,
Sure.
there are a lot of doctors' offices doing curbside vaccinations as well for their established patients. So even if some of those kids are sick, which is something I've seen, there was my nephew had a cold and he needed his vaccines before he could go back to school, and they just did curbside vaccination. They had him sign from the driver's seat, and he popped his little arm out, just like how we got our COVID shots over at the stadium. So even if you're not comfortable necessarily getting into the office or taking your kid into the office, you can still keep them up to date on those vaccines with a lot of those practices that are doing curbside or outdoors or whatever. Everybody's offering something a little bit different to try to accommodate.
Yeah, definitely. I know that's how I got my kids' flu shots last year. And I actually preferred it because they were secured in their car seats. I have my older daughter, she's in first grade. So she is very much does not like getting shots, and she will scream.
Spirited.
Yes, spirited, we'll say that. But she'll flail about. So I actually was like, oh my gosh, we have to do this every year because she was secured, so she couldn't go anywhere, which sounds kind of bad, but for her health.
We all get it. It's understandable.
Yeah. So it's, it can be done, and they're doing it safely, and it's super important to do. And then, of course, you want to remember that we all need protection as we grow. Shots are not just for babies. My 3-month-old will get his shots at 4 months and 6 months and continue to go. But it's just as important for my school-age daughter to get her shots on time when she needs it, just as it's important for me to get my shots, the flu shot and any other one as I get older, to make sure that I'm protected. So it's really important to follow the recommended immunization schedule, and really just make sure that they're protected throughout their whole lifespan. Okay, so we're going to watch this quick video. So that we went through all of our 10 things. So now we're going to kind of transition into some common questions that we hear. But first, we wanted to show you this video of how vaccines work. It's really interesting. You might want to jot down some notes if anything stands out to you, but it really just kind of gives you a better understanding of why vaccines work and why they're so important. So just a sec.
This is the checkers game where grandson and granddad will bond. This is the kitchen where the new boy...
Aren't you glad you don't have scurvy? In 1747, in the first medical trial ever performed, Scottish physician James Lind found out that eating citrus fruits could cure scurvy. Now, today we know this works because citrus contains high levels of vitamin C. In fact, ascorbic acid, a common name for vitamin C, comes from the Latin for not scurvy. By issuing rations of lemon juice to sailors, the British Navy was able to pretty much eliminate the disease until the late 1800s, when polar explorers suddenly began to see scurvy again. The copper pots holding their lime juice had destroyed the vitamin C, but they were pretty confused. So despite James Lind's experiments 150 years before, citrus fruits became the enemy. And when Robert Falcon Scott set out to reach the South Pole in 1911, he carried the finest in canned meat products, biscuits, chocolate, tea, and zero vitamin C. A Norwegian team beat them to the pole by 5 weeks, and during their sad journey home, Scott and his team perished in a blizzard, sick and weak from what was probably scurvy. It had been so long since anyone had seen this disease, the British had forgotten how to prevent it. When we create such effective solutions, we can forget how serious the problems were. Thankfully, people today don't die of scurvy or polio. Since the introduction of Jonas Salk's polio vaccine in 1955, the disease has been nearly eradicated from the earth.
The thing to remember is that this is a continuous process.
Compare the 358 infections reported in 2014 to the 1940s, when 500,000 people per year were paralyzed or died from polio infections. Vaccines work. Our immune system is on constant alert against germy baddies, with millions of white blood cells each on the lookout for specific infections. When an immune cell meets its target, it replicates itself, and this clone army sends a barrage of protein weapons called antibodies to label the trash for cleanup. And after the infection is gone, so-called memory cells stick around, ready to mount a fast attack in case this germ shows up again. This is how we develop immunity, and it works pretty well, since we're all still alive. But even with all that, some super bad germs can take us out before our immune sentries have had time to call up their clone army. This is especially true for young children. Their immune systems are fresh out of basic training. Thankfully, we have vaccines, which are made of tiny pieces or weakened versions of viruses or bacteria. They let our immune system see what the bad guys look like and recruit those all-important memory cells before we ever have to actually see the real enemy. Thanks to vaccines, the US was able to eliminate measles in the year 2000. But in recent years, as more and more parents are refusing to vaccinate their children or are vaccinating them later than what doctors recommend, it's back. In most states, more than 90% of children are vaccinated, but that's not enough to keep a disease like measles at bay. In our episode about Ebola, we talked about a number called R0, the basic reproduction number for a disease, or the number of people infected by one person in a susceptible population. For Ebola, that number is low, but for measles, each sick person will infect up to 18 others. But luckily, vaccines can change that. The fraction of people who are vaccinated or immune can lower the reproduction number below 1, which means the disease is disappearing. 90% of unprotected people who come in contact with somebody who has measles, even just breathing the same air, will become infected. To control a super contagious virus like that, the vaccination rate has to be 95% or above. And right now, the US is lagging behind, and measles is making a comeback. The Guardian put together a simulation of just how this so-called herd immunity works. When enough of a population is vaccinated, even if it's not 100%, the herd can protect the unprotected. With vaccine refusal on the rise, our herd immunity is breaking down. Preventable diseases like measles and whooping cough have become our scurvy. Most of us don't know anyone with polio, and I mean, measles. It's not that bad, right? Well, yes, it is that bad. Before the age of vaccines, millions of people were killed by diseases that today are just bad memories. Vaccines have let us develop a sort of generational amnesia. Today we expect our children to grow up healthy, and we're lucky that we don't appreciate just how dangerous these diseases are. Like science writer Seth Mnookin says, vaccines are victims of their own success. Because of stories like Andrew Wakefield's discredited study wrongly linking vaccines and autism, and the news media's obsession with pictures of crying, terrified children being poked with needles, people are nervous about vaccines. This anxiety isn't new, though. When Edward Jenner in 1798 saw that milkmaids didn't catch smallpox, well, he realized that because they'd been exposed to the similar cowpox disease, they were immune. And based on this, he developed an early smallpox vaccine by inoculating humans with the cow virus. In fact, the word vaccine itself has bovine origins. Still, as far back as 1802, critics were claiming that the smallpox inoculation would turn you into a cow. Vaccines don't come without risk. Nothing does. But on average, fewer than 1 in a million people will experience a dangerous reaction to common vaccines. Car accidents, playing outside, even walking will injure more children. Vaccines are asking us to do something altruistic, to make a choice to protect not only ourselves and our children, but also those around us. Author Eula Biss says that vaccines are one of the most empathetic things that we can do. A system that's based on people voluntarily using their bodies to protect other vulnerable people. And that's something I hope we don't forget. Now, I'm a doctor, but I'm not that kind of doctor. It's natural to have questions about vaccines, and you should have a conversation with your medical professional. They want the best for you and yours. I will give you one prescription though, and that's to subscribe so you can get a full dose of science every week. And if you want to read some amazing books about vaccines, check out Seth Mnookin's The Panic Virus and On Immunity by Eula Biss. Links in the description. Stay curious.
Would you like me to take it from here? Yeah? Okay, cool. All right, so that is one of my favorite videos. I, even outside of this presentation, I've referenced it several times. Now is an awesome time to reference it because of COVID and questions around COVID. The vaccine conversation is at the forefront of every hot topic. So now is an excellent time to really utilize these resources. And this is one I really highly recommend. I know it gets like a little technical in the middle there, and if that's your jam, awesome. If that's not, that is really kind of a short part of this entire video. And so I think it's if you want to skip through it while you're showing it to folks, skip through that, but frankly, I think it really is pretty understandable by most of the population. And so this is one, I don't know, necessarily what your setting is, but I know a lot of our practices, a lot of our offices have a tablet that we're letting folks use, or that we're letting kids use, or that we're having people fill out their information on. And if you had an opportunity to upload this video, if no other video, this video, to show families to provide education, it's catchy, it's witty, it's clever. This is really a well put together piece of educational material. So as with all of the resources in our presentation, this is just one that would be really smart for you to try to figure out how to utilize. And then to talk about the video, sorry, I almost forgot. This really does bring us back to what we were talking about with vaccine amnesia, right? We're talking about the scurvy thing where citrus was extremely effective in eliminating scurvy, and then all of a sudden we've got folks going out on voyages without something as simple as citrus with vitamin C, and we're dying of scurvy because we forgot. And so this is why the vaccine amnesia conversation really is very important, and we need to really understand how critical it is and how much of an impact it has on our community. Because when people say, oh, it must not have been that bad, we need to remember it really was that bad. It was bad enough that we needed to develop a vaccine because the side effects or the symptoms were severe and people were dying, or there were lifelong damaging effects from every single one of these vaccine preventable diseases. Okay, so this is the fun part. We are going to have a little conversation about dispelling some of these myths that we've been hearing regarding vaccines and vaccinations, vaccine schedules, and we'll kind of go through them. So now that, let's see. Oh, so as we're going through these questions, excuse me, I want to kind of have you think about the different scenarios that we're going to present here. And if you've encountered these scenarios, even if you haven't, you should know that you probably will when you start opening up these vaccine conversations. So do pay attention to, these are kind of the bigger questions that we've been tackling, because it's inevitable, it will come up. And actually, I wanted to say just really quick, one of the things that Laura had kind of helped us understand was we really can use our own experiences to think about how we talk to parents and how we talk to caregivers to encourage them to vaccinate. Because, you may be a professional and your opinion is very valued, but the emotional connection is extremely important. Like I said, I know the rules about vaccines, but when it came to pulling the trigger on giving my kid 4 shots, I was like, oh, well, should we not? And my provider had an emotional connection with me and shared a story about her own life and personal experience, and was very human in this conversation. It wasn't, you get them done because that's what you're supposed to do. That's not what she did. What she did was really kind of wrap around us and embrace us and have a real life conversation. And I think that's very important for you to remember as well. Okay, now I'm ready for the next slide. Sorry about that, Wendy. Okay, so this is a fun one. This is particularly important now because of COVID as well, and a lot of conversations about the journey of a vaccine. So listen to the scenario. I want you to kind of think about what you would do, and then we're going to jump into some of our resources and ideas on the next slide. So a couple you're friends with tell you that they worry that newer vaccines are not safe. Think the COVID vaccine. They worry that the pharmaceutical companies make vaccines without testing them before they're given to kids and adults. So we should talk about what resources we have available to help them with their concerns. So before a new, and we are going to watch a cool video. Again, you can reference it next time you're chatting with folks, or if you want to include it in some kind of package or resource that you're putting together. But here's the Spark Notes. Before a new vaccine is ever given to people, extensive lab testing is done that can take several years. Once testing in people begins, it can take several more years because clinical studies are, before clinical studies are complete, then the vaccine is licensed. The Food and Drug Administration and the FDA sets rules for the 3 phases of clinical trials to ensure safety of the volunteers. Researchers test vaccines with adults first. The FDA and the CDC closely monitor vaccine safety after the public begins using the vaccine. And the purpose of monitoring is to watch for adverse events, possible side effects, Monitoring a vaccine after it is licensed helps ensure that possible risks associated with a vaccine are identified. This actually touches on a lot of things that we've already kind of tapped into in previous slides. The first one, though, I find very interesting because this is really where I think a lot of people get hung up, and it is making a vaccine takes several years. And then we see that our COVID vaccine was generated in, less than 24 months, which is freaking awesome. But how? I mean, if I just got done telling you it takes several years, then how can I tell you that the COVID vaccine is safe? And one of the best ways for me to help you kind of picture this is previous vaccine studies were taking this long because that's how long it took for us to get that many cases of a disease. Okay, so if I could get 1,000 cases of pertussis in a year, and we could study that and we could develop a vaccine around it, then it's going to take me a couple of years, maybe even a decade to develop a vaccine. But if you have a pandemic where 100,000 people are getting this vaccine or are getting this disease every single month, then you have a massive pool of diseased individuals, for lack of better phrasing, that you can research, you can study, you can pull samples from, that you can develop a vaccine around much faster. So the sample is there, it's readily available, and it makes streamlining this way easier. Also, because this is a multinational project, if you will, because we had several big hitter countries working together, sharing information freely, to work on this as soon as possible. And with today's technology, we were able to expedite this entire process. I mean, tenfold. It's technology, it's exposures. I mean, a lot of things came into place to be able to produce this safe vaccine as fast as possible. So just because this was made faster does not mean corners were cut. Every single thing that had to be followed, every single rule, every single red tape, every single a T crossed and I dotted still had to be followed when developing these COVID vaccines. But again, because of technology, because of samples, because of access, all of this was able to happen much, much faster. And then let's see, it's worth noting that the Pfizer vaccine is FDA approved now, which is really exciting. I don't know if, I'm assuming most of you are aware of that, but in case you weren't, it not being FDA approved is no longer a concern for folks who are saying they don't want to get the vaccine because the FDA hasn't approved it. That's no longer the case. And then lastly, the last two bulletins or bullets really kind of go toward, again, talking about how we don't just develop a vaccine and leave it like that forever. There's tons of monitoring that goes into being able to hone in and perfect vaccines as time goes on. We're going to watch this exciting video. It's not super long. It's like maybe 6 minutes, but there is a ton of information. Watch it closely. It's pretty cool. And again, this is another one of those that would be really cool if you could figure out how to kind of use it in your settings.
The journey of your child's vaccine. A vaccine must be safe and effective. How a new vaccine is developed, approved, and manufactured. Vaccines begin the journey in the laboratory, where scientists work to figure out how best to protect against dangerous germs. Before a new vaccine is made available to the public, researchers usually must do years of lab tests on the vaccine. If lab results look promising and the vaccine appears to be both safe and effective, volunteers will be enrolled to get the vaccines in a series of carefully monitored clinical trials. The manufacturer usually conducts 3 phases of clinical trials. Each phase is designed to gather more information about the vaccine's safety and how well it works. These trials can take years to complete. During phase 1, about 20 to 100 healthy adults get the vaccine. Researchers track how well the vaccine works, whether it's safe, what is the correct dose for disease protection, and what possible serious side effects may occur. In phase 2, hundreds of volunteers participate. This is when experts learn more about the possible short-term side effects and how the volunteers' immune systems are responding. Phase 3 trials are the most informative, with results from hundreds or even thousands of volunteers. In these trials, vaccinated volunteers are compared with volunteers who receive another vaccine or no vaccine. These results give researchers a better idea of how well the vaccine works and if there are possible side effects they should expect. The Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, along with the Vaccines and Related Biological Products Advisory Committee, review all of the data the researchers have gathered throughout the trials and decide whether or not to license the vaccine. Once licensed, vaccines are made in batches called lots. Manufacturers test the lots to make sure the vaccines are safe, pure, and potent. The FDA reviews the safety and quality of each lot before it is released. The FDA inspects manufacturing facilities on a regular basis to ensure quality and safety. How a vaccine is added to the U.S. recommended immunization schedule. Once the FDA licenses a vaccine, CDC brings together the members of the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, or ACIP, to review all of the research available on the licensed vaccine. The members of the ACIP include world-renowned vaccine and disease experts from groups like the American Academy of Pediatrics and the American Academy of Family Physicians, CDC, and other government agencies. These experts look at how well the vaccine works and whether it's safe when given to different age groups. They also weigh the seriousness of the disease the vaccine prevents and figure out how many children would get sick if they did not get vaccinated. The experts then decide if they should recommend that vaccine be added to the U.S. recommended immunization schedule. If the CDC approves the experts' recommendations, the vaccine officially becomes part of the schedule, and soon it will be available at your healthcare provider's office. How a vaccine's safety continues to be monitored. Once children start getting the vaccine, the FDA and CDC continue to watch for possible side effects. Reactions that happen after a vaccination get reported to the Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System, or VAERS. Anyone can submit a report to VAERS, including parents, caregivers, patients, doctors, and nurses. However, the reactions that are reported may or may not be caused by the vaccines. They may require further investigation. Researchers at FDA and CDC analyze the VAERS reports and look for any trends that may be happening. FDA and CDC also use other vaccine safety systems. The Vaccine Safety Data Link, or VSD, and the Post-Licensure Rapid Immunization Safety Monitoring System, or PRISM, actively monitor new vaccines to obtain additional information about their safety. VSD has access to healthcare information for over 24 million people. PRISM can analyze healthcare information from over 190 million people. CDC also uses the Clinical Immunization Safety Assessment Project, or CISA, to study vaccine safety. CISA is a collaboration between CDC and 7 medical research centers. CISA vaccine safety experts conduct individual case reviews and clinical research studies about vaccine safety. Recommendations for using the vaccine may change if the vaccine's risks are found to be greater than its benefits. The end goal is always the same: to safely and effectively protect children, families, and communities against potentially serious diseases. For more information, please visit cdc.gov/vaccines or cdc.gov/vaccine-safety or fda.gov/CBER.
Okay, so there's a lot of information there. This video has, I mean, it is punch after punch after punch of valuable and useful information. Understanding, however, that can kind of feel like a lot. So what I really think is important for you to take away from this is that it's not just the CDC or the FDA that's monitoring vaccine production or vaccine safety. There are multiple agencies out there that are looking at vaccine efficacy, purity, safety. They're looking at it down the road. Is it effective still? Is it causing any problems? Is there something we need to do to tweak the ingredients or the recipe to make sure that it continues to be as effective and as potent as possible? There's VAERS, which enables literally anyone in the community to submit reports and have their voice heard. So this is not just something that the government puts together and encourages you to get done. And there are tons of checks and balances out in the community in our society that make sure that vaccines are safe. So when we talk to parents, we can really reassure them that vaccines are safe and effective. Whether or not you decide to show them this 6-minute long video that's got a lot of information and can kind of maybe seem like it's going to inundate them, the important things for you to take away are they are safe, they are effective, and they are monitored. Oh, and I see tons of questions going through the chat box. Thank you very much. I want you to just keep doing that. I want to encourage you to keep putting those questions in there. Yay, the fun part. The part that we've only really kind of recently been able to add, which is COVID-19 vaccines. The safety of COVID-19 vaccines is absolutely the top priority. I know I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but as we spoke about in the last slide or the slide before that, heavy research was done, no corners were cut, no red tape was ignored. Everything was done to code the way it was supposed to when developing the COVID-19 vaccine. So full safety trials were done on each vaccine, and ongoing monitoring continues and will continue. As long as the COVID vaccine is a thing that we have to keep doing, it will be monitored, and eventually it's going to be honed down. It's going to be perfected, just like every other vaccine that we have. The Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine is recommended for children 12 and up, and safety trials are still ongoing for kids down to age 2. So everything we learned today about how vaccines works applies to the new COVID vaccine, including all the safety monitoring and the approvals. Full safety trials were done, and ongoing monitoring continues. Children were not among the first to get the vaccine because the clinical trials did not include children. Clinical trials start with adults, healthy adults, and then once everything goes well with that, as it seems to be going, trials begin with kids, which has already started. However, as the vaccine proves to be safe in adults, additional trials have included children, and now children 12 and older can receive the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine. The goal, of course, is to be able to vaccinate as much of the population as is possible, especially because this Delta variant seems to be causing a lot of problems for our kiddos. Having that get done as soon as possible really is going to be advantageous. One of the things that Wendy had mentioned earlier about getting the flu and COVID is a lot of people, my children included, are getting hit with a lot of those back to school garbage germs. So we had hand, foot, and mouth when my 2-month-olds, just before my 2-month-olds came home from the hospital, and then 3 weeks later, all 4 of my kids got RSV. And so one of the things that the hospitalists were saying is they're having, over at PCH especially, a lot of kids are being admitted not just with RSV or with rhinovirus. They're getting COVID-19 and RSV. They're getting COVID-19 and the flu and pneumonia and COVID, etc. So being able to vaccinate and protect against whatever we can is going to help kind of alleviate those awful things doubling up on each other and ending up having our kids end up in those clinical settings. So as soon as that COVID-19 vaccine becomes available, which I don't think we have, and correct me if I'm wrong, Wendy, I don't know if you've heard otherwise, but I don't think there is a projected date at this time, but it's something my family is very much looking forward to, is that COVID-19 vaccine, proving to be safe for kiddos and rolling out so we can get that done. So I think we pretty much touched on a lot of this, but your child may need other vaccines like the Tdap, the MCV4, HPV, flu, and meningitis as well. So it's safe to get them all at the same time as the COVID-19 vaccine. Vaccinated kids protect other kids in the classroom, friends, and family. And I know we were talking about the exemptions around Arizona students, but we really need to keep those vaccine exemptions to medically fragile folks, people who are allergic, people who are immunocompromised, because those kids that are not getting vaccinated because they cannot are at a particularly high risk. And for the folks around them that can get vaccinated and just refuse to, I mean, that can be, that's a hurtful thought, in my opinion. Let's see, children that have been vaccinated will not, oh, excuse me, my font is very small. Children that have been vaccinated will not have to quarantine for 2 weeks after exposure to COVID-19, and they will be able to stay in school and activities. This goes for the adults who have been vaccinated as well. Potential exposures, as long as they've been vaccinated, means that they don't have to quarantine. They don't have to be shut-ins for 12 to 14 days. Anybody who has a child or a teenager that had to deal with this last year knows that there's a significant mental health impact on our kiddos when they have to be shut-ins for, shoot, my kids for 5 days, let alone 14 days or several months. And I mean, long COVID has been a real thing very recently too. So, and that's folks who have long-term effects from COVID after being healed, after being COVID negative. They have some of these side effects and symptoms that last, that may last forever. We can't say yet, but long COVID is very real, and it is popping up in kids too. So we want to make sure that they get vaccinated. COVID-19 vaccine will get kids back in activities and back to the friends that they love. So again, I mean, I myself am a bit reclusive, so my life hasn't changed a ton since this pandemic. Quarantining and self-isolation has started, but my kids have been going nuts. So being able to just kind of get them vaccinated and move past this is really a number one goal for us. Okay. This slide pretty much speaks for itself. The COVID-19 vaccine is for 12 and up. This is an excellent resource for you to print out and stick on your wall. Print it out and stick it on your door. Make a shoe card of it and hand it out to folks when you're handing them their registration packets or their discharge paperwork or whatever information you might be handing to your families. Print this out. Do it in black and white. I don't care. If you can do it in color, awesome. But this information is critical. It's extremely important. So your best shot to protect your child and others against COVID-19 is getting that COVID vaccine. It's your turn. It tells you where you can get the vaccine. It's extremely important that we get this done. We want to be working with the children to get their COVID-19 vaccines. We want them to stay healthy to continue, and we want you to stay healthy, to continue to serve Arizona's families. So this resource is cool to give to your families, but also it's really kind of directed at you. We want you to make sure you get your COVID-19 vaccine as long as you're over the age of 12, and my guess is you probably are. So I guess what we really want you to realize is you may be part of a small team or you may be part of a large team, but if you get COVID, you're out of the game. You can't play for a while. Hopefully you're healthy after 2 weeks. There's not a best way to say that, but hopefully after 2 weeks you can return, and hopefully you haven't infected anyone else. But chances are you got COVID from somewhere, and it could be someone else on your team. All of this to say that if you're taken out of rotation, if you're not in the game right now, that means that someone is not getting the service that you provide. It means that you can't continue to serve Arizona's families, and you are an extremely vital player in all of Arizona's community, essentially. I mean, you disseminate information that is critical for our community. So the COVID-19 vaccine is widely available now. It is still free or covered by your insurance, depends, you can either get it for free under your insurance or under the program. So you're still not going to be asked to pay for it, and you can still find it basically everywhere. So we just, it's very important that you get out there and put your money where your mouth is. And I think, and Wendy, if you're comfortable speaking to this as well, you can, but I got my COVID vaccine pretty early on, and I was extremely happy to do so. And I'm not saying it was without any symptoms. I had a headache and a low-grade fever, and I just felt kind of logy for the day for the first vaccine. And the second one, I had a headache that Tylenol took care of just fine. So, it's not like I went partying after because it was a grand old time. It certainly was like getting any other shot. But it was well worth it, knowing that I am building that fence around my community and around my household and around my family. Did you want to speak on that at all, Wendy?
I was just going to say that, we were in a nice position because we're essential health workers working for the state health department, as I'm sure many of you were as well. So we got to get the vaccine pretty early in Arizona. And I got it, my arm was sore, and that was pretty much it. So I'm been extremely fortunate. I think it was about 6 months pregnant when I got the first one. And I can tell you I was more affected by just being pregnant than the vaccine. I was tired, but I was always tired. So that, that was just, it was another thing. I couldn't, there are so many reasons why I should be tired. So I don't know if that was from the vaccine. But yeah, my arm was sore. So I'm one of those, I don't know how many people had that. You always hear, of course, about the big, the big symptoms and the people who were pretty ill for a day or so. But still, even that, being sick for a day and maybe having to take a day off of work is a little bit better than having to take 2 weeks off of work and potentially getting very sick if you were to get COVID-19. So I hope more people had the experience that I did. And of course, you're not going to hear about it because there's nothing sensational about it just being another day. So
yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide, or the slide that you're on here. This one, once you're fully vaccinated against COVID-19, you can safely participate in many activities. And there's, a little graphic on the side that kind of talks about what the CDC recommends you can and can't do once you're vaccinated, or if you are vaccinated. And essentially, it really kind of says that if you're unvaccinated, you can't go have fun. And as it really is pretty straight and to the point. And it's not to exert any kind of governmental control over anyone. It's not some nefarious way to get everybody to get injected with, the nanobite that's going to give you free Wi-Fi or whatever conspiracy theory you've heard of. The long and short of it is, tons of public health experts, epidemiologists and otherwise have poured their lives into developing this program for COVID, first to mitigate the spread of disease, to mitigate long-term disease effects, and then to get society rolling again. That is truly the whole picture. So, wearing a mask is great, and it does kind of talk about the things that you can do safely without a mask, with and without a vaccine. But ultimately, if you want things to go back to normal and to have fun, and for people to not be dying of COVID-19, and for your ICUs to not be loaded with people who have COVID, so that other people who don't have COVID can't get essential services from their emergency departments and otherwise, we need to get vaccinated. We need to let people know that they need to get vaccinated. And again, I want to reiterate, it's not because of government control. This is literally just decades, centuries worth of studying pandemics and endemics, and figuring out what we need to do to get this thing done and over with. So once you've been fully vaccinated against COVID, so 2 weeks after your second dose of the Pfizer or the Moderna, or after your first dose of Johnson & Johnson, you can safely participate in many activities like dining at restaurants, going to movie theaters, and you can reference this chart, through the CDC. Okay, let's move on to the next one here. And we are kind of, I know we wanted to avoid saying this, but we are kind of running short on time. I'm so sorry. So let's kind of buzz through this one. This scenario is another one you're going to hear a lot. I've already said that I did it. I'm this mom. Mom and dad both think vaccines are good. I think they're great, but that babies get too many at one visit and their immune systems are still too new for so many. They plan to delay some vaccines and only get 2 at each visit. I can't say that I don't understand why, because I clearly already told you that I am 100% guilty of this. So let's talk about some resources that we can kind of utilize. First and foremost, getting childhood vaccines are not an extra burden on the immune system. Please remember that. If you don't remember anything else, getting childhood vaccines are not an extra burden on the immune system. And we'll talk about why, but if this is the only thing you remember this. Even for babies are exposed to hundreds of viruses and bacteria during normal activities like eating and playing. Even though kids receive more vaccines, they receive far fewer antigens overall compared to their parents and their grandparents. So our children are now protected against more disease too. Let's watch this video really quick. This is Dr. Offit. We're going to watch a couple of videos from Dr. Offit. It's helpful to know what to say to parents when they bring up concerns like this. This is where my pediatrician really came in and saved the day for my kiddos. Let's go ahead and play this. And in case you missed it at the top, Dr. Offit is from the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia.
Hi, my name is Paul Offit. I'm talking to you today from the Vaccine Education Center here at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. The most common question that we get asked here at the center is, do babies get too many vaccines? It's an understandable question. In the first few years of life, babies get vaccines to prevent 14 different infections. That can mean as many as 27 inoculations during that first few years of life. It can mean as many as 6 shots at one time. And I don't care how smart you are about viruses or immunology, it's hard to watch your baby go through that. So the question is it too many? Well, so let's take a step back. When babies are in the womb, they're in a sterile environment. When they enter the birth canal and the world, they're not. And very quickly, they have living on the surface of their body trillions of bacteria. I'm not just trying to sound like Carl Sagan here, literally trillions of bacteria. You actually have roughly 100 trillion bacteria on the surface of your body. That's more than you have cells in your body. Now, each bacterium, each single bacterium has between 2,000 and 6,000 immunological components. Now, by immunological component, what I mean is the complex sugar that sits on the outside of the bacteria, so-called polysaccharide, or the proteins that make up the bacteria. Viruses also have proteins, and those are considered also immunological components. Now, if you add up all the immunological components that are currently contained in vaccines, it adds up to about 160. So think about that, 160 immunological components which consist of viral proteins, bacterial proteins, or bacterial polysaccharides, as compared to the trillions of bacteria, each bacterium of which contains 2,000 to 6,000 immunological components. So I think literally what you are exposed to in vaccines is a drop in the ocean compared to what you're exposed to in daily life. Frankly, I think a cut on your knee is a greater challenge to your immune system than are vaccines. I think the common cold, which can reproduce itself thousands of times in your body, is a greater challenge to your immune system than vaccines. So I think the short answer to the question, can babies tolerate so many vaccines given in the first few years of life, is yes. Because frankly, they encounter far more in their environment than they're ever going to encounter in vaccines. Thank you.
So again, Dr. Offit's videos are going to be available to you in the resources section, and you're going to get this stuff emailed to you after this as well. But if you have a challenge where you really need to be able to present an expert in the arena, and you need to be able to have some credibility to your conversation, then Dr. Offit's videos are excellent for you to reference. Moving along to the next one. The next immunization conversation has to do with the ingredients. Oh, maybe it doesn't. Maybe it has to do with autism. And I'm going to pass this one off to Miss Wendy.
Yes. So we obviously spent a lot of time on the COVID-19 vaccine conversation, just because if you can't tell, we're very passionate about it. So I'm just going to kind of blow through these slides, and I'm so sorry, but there's tons of resources available, and Tappy will definitely lead you in the right direction. But let me go through this real quick. A mom of a 13-month-old toddler is sharing in her mom's group that her baby is not the same as she was before her MMR shot. She's worried that the shot caused harm and wants to warn others about vaccines and autism. So here's some resources to help with that concern. Sorry, just a sec. There we go. It's interesting because autism usually becomes apparent around the same age that the MMR vaccine is given. So, you know, we like to say a lot of times that correlation does not equal causation. Just because they happened around the same time doesn't mean that one caused another. So that's something that's important for you to use in your conversations with parents. So I'm just going to go through these real quick. There's another video that Dr. Offit explains this, which is very good. So if you have time, you will get this presentation at the end with an email that's going out. So you'll be able to kind of go through all these videos as well. I don't know if you all have heard of measles parties and how they used to get kids to, well, hopefully used to, I don't know how common they are anymore. But they want to know if a chickenpox or measles party is a good idea. So basically the idea is a kid has chickenpox or measles, and then you get all the kids around them so that they get it at the same time, and then their body has immunity. So we talked about this before on how natural infection is not better than getting the vaccine, and vaccines can help prevent a myriad of bad outcomes if you would not have gotten the vaccine and you got the actual infection. It could be much more severe. Natural disease can include paralysis, permanent brain damage, liver cirrhosis or cancer, deafness, blindness, pneumonia, and death. I mean, it's as hard to hear as it is. I mean, that's the truth. Again, Dr. Offit video, so please take a look if you can. We want to talk also real quickly about school requirements. Mom received a notice from her preschool that her baby is behind on the required school doses. You also notice that the baby needs pneumococcal, but mom declines that vaccine because she wants to get the most important ones that are required and wait on the optional vaccines. So the ones that are for school are decided by, it's kind of strange. Oh, let me move forward. Schools, what is required for schools or childcare is based on state policy. So that can be different from what the Advisory Council on Immunization Practices or the Academy of Pediatrics recommends, and is more inclusive. So to have full protection, you want to go with what your doctor is recommending, not just what is required for school. It's political. There's a lot of different things that play into why why schools require some things and not others. But what's important to remember is that your doctor and that trusted relationship with the doctor is going to offer you the best protection against all of the different vaccine preventable diseases that are circulating. Again, another video. I kind of mentioned before about the Google doctors and how you can find a lot of really bad information on the internet. And what's interesting is that when you look up one bad article, then your kind of orbit, the information that's being fed to you through Facebook, through different social media, sees that and says, oh, you like that? Let me send you some more that's exactly like that. So pretty soon, all you're seeing is unreliable information. So you feel like that's what's happening. And that's what's true, and that's what's going on in the world. When in all actuality, it's not. They're finding things that they think you're going to like based on what you've looked at before. So it's very important to check your sources and make sure that you're looking up reliable, factual, science-based information to consume yourself and to also share with others. And TAPI is a great resource for that. We've showed you a lot of information from the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. They have a ton of information, CDC, of course, and then TAPI. So there's a conversation, vaccine conversations and parent handouts that TAPI has. And I apologize, I'm just flying through these. And there's tons of resources. So TAPI does a great job of putting together educational materials. They can help you design something if there's something that you need and they don't have. They can help you customize the ones that they do have to put your logo and double brand it so that it's you're a united front. Yeah, so that is everything that we have. Please go to TAPI for more information.
Oh, sorry, we had to fly through that last
Yeah.
10, 15 minutes, but do reference all that information and utilize it for your work.
Thank you so much. You both did such a great job today sharing all this information about immunizations. If you want to go back one slide, I just want to hit on this point real quick. So Vaccines for Children is a free program. If your health insurance does not cover vaccines, or if you do not have health insurance, or any of the families you work with, they can get vaccines for free. So please use this program. If you need to know more information, our website is here, whyimmunize.org, and we can find you a free vaccination clinic. Go ahead and go forward, please. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we love to give prizes. Please fill out the evaluation. I put the link in the chat. 5 prizes will be drawn, and we have some really fun ones right now. So please do that. If you are a certified health education specialist, a registered nurse, or social worker, we do have CEUs available for today. A participation certificate will also be sent out to all those who attended the training. And so I will put the link for the evaluation for the credits in the chat. And then that survey or that certificate gets mailed to you within 15 business days. So again, the presentation, resources, chat box questions and answers will be available on our website, and also in an email I'll be sending you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Have a great day, and visit our website if you would like any of the resources from today. Thank you so much. Have a great afternoon. And we can end the recording and stop sharing your screen. Thank you.